What if the guy who humiliated you in high school sending you explicit photos of your girlfriend ended up losing everything because of you? Years later, I'm talking to his family, his friends. This is the story of how I waited 6 long years to get my revenge on Kyle. A guy so toxic he made every Kyle meme look tame. He thought he could wreck my life and walk away. But I bided my time, played it smart, and when the opportunity came, I didn't just hit back, I burned his world to the ground. And that kept us from imploding faster than we probably would have otherwise. I had my crew, mostly other stockroom kids, burnout musicians, the usual mall rats. She had hers, mostly from her classes and people she met through a part-time job at the local diner. It was late, but no, the message was from Kyle. I opened it, thinking maybe it was some stupid group text about a party or someone needing a ride. Instead, I saw 3 pictures pop up one after another, past midnight. The second was her with Kyle's girlfriend, some cheap bedroom selfie. But the third, even though it only half loaded because my phone was trash back then, I knew exactly what I was seeing. My girlfriend, mouth on Kyle, giving him head, and I was getting ready to crash. Called each other out on every shitty thing we'd done, then made up. The next few weeks were tense. Kyle wasn't someone I could just run into at school anymore. I'd graduated. We didn't share classes or lunch periods. Everyone around us treated the drama like it was just another day. Our friends were used to our constant chaos. Nobody even really blamed Kyle because, by then, not really. But I listened when people talked about him. I watched as he bragged about conquests, trash-talked everyone behind their backs. Kyle was going to get what he gave. And when that day came, I'd make sure it hit him where it hurt the most, and treated his own girlfriend like dirt. Every story about him just added fuel to the fire burning quietly inside me. Even after we patched things up, the memory of those pictures stayed burned in my mind. I'd see her laughing or smiling and remember her on her knees for him. I'd be lying if I said I forgave her completely. Part of me hated her for it, and part of me hated myself for letting her back into my life. We'd all accepted that nothing about our relationship was healthy. They just shrugged and moved on. And part of me wanted to hunt him down and beat him senseless, but another part just let it go. I wanted to punch a hole through the wall, drive across town, and beat Kyle into the dirt. I told myself Kyle would get what he deserved eventually. Guys like him always did. And I was too tired, too angry at the world, too wrapped up in my own drama, to plan anything more. But it was late. I had work in a few hours. And in that moment, the weight of all the other times we'd cheated on each other just crushed me. Because this wasn't the first betrayal, just the worst. My shift at the toy store was brutal, stocking shelves. Eventually, I set the phone down and stared at the ceiling. I thought about what I'd say to her. I thought about what I'd do to Kyle. Then I thought about how sick I was of all of it, the screaming, the jealousy, the lying, the cheating. So I decided I wasn't going to do anything. Hauling boxes, I confronted her about the photos, called her every name I could think of. She cried, tried to flip it on me, said Kyle, told her I was sleeping with his girlfriend's sister or some bullshit. And part of me believed it because we were both guilty of cheating before. Our relationship was built on broken glass, and every step we took together just cut us up more. And cleaning up after every kid who'd trashed the place during the day. Kyle had been feeding her lies, convincing her I was messing around behind her back. He was manipulative, good at twisting reality until you doubted what you knew was true. She fell for it, and in her anger, she slept with him to get back at me. Did I believe her completely? Not really. But that was the poison of our relationship. We never trusted each other, yet we couldn't let each other go. I was bone tired, just waiting to let my body sink into the mattress. That's when my phone buzzed. Our worlds rarely overlapped, except for one unfortunate connection. Kyle, I've known her since junior high. Back then, she was the girl who could light up a room just by walking into it. Imagine every joke you've ever heard about drywall punching. Kyle's hopped up on Monster and cheap vodka, then multiplied by 10. He had a reputation for being controlling and abusive with his girlfriend later, his wife, who also happened to be close to my girlfriend at the time. He'd brag about getting away with the worst shit, like stealing from his own friends, hooking up with girls behind his girlfriend's back, even getting one girl hooked on pills so he could manipulate her into giving up her baby. He was trash, but he had this sick charm that kept people from just cutting him off completely. If he was at a party, everyone acted like it was normal, even though we all knew he was a walking dumpster fire. And somehow, despite all the chaos around us, we always ended up circling back to each other. But we had mutual friends. Sometimes that meant bumping into him at parties or standing awkwardly next to him at shows. He was the kind of guy who'd size you up with a grin, waiting to find the one thing that would piss you off. Back then, I didn't think much about him beyond avoiding direct fights. But in hindsight, Kyle was watching us more closely than I realized. He saw how unstable our relationship was, how easy it would be to wedge himself in. I didn't know it yet, but he was already laying the groundwork for the worst betrayal of my life. Other nights, we'd sleep with other people out of spite, then crawl back into each other's arms because we couldn't stand being apart. I was working stock crew at the mall toy store, which meant some mornings I'd clock in at 5 a.m. and others I'd be there all night watching the security gates roll down, while the rest of the world slept. My sleep schedule was trash. Some days I'd get 2 hours of rest and stumble into class half awake, barely keeping my eyes open while the teachers droned on about algebra and history. The only thing that felt real back then was her hour fights, our hookups, our late-night phone calls where we swore we'd run away together someday. It was toxic, but we were too young, too stubborn, and too wrapped up in the drama to even think about calling it quits for good. By high school, it felt like fate had shoved us together. It was messy, intense, like pouring gasoline on a campfire, exciting one moment, burning out of control the next. We'd fight over the stupidest things. A glance at another person, a text left unanswered, a rumor started by someone we barely knew. And when we fought dirty, yelling, ignoring, pushing each other's buttons just to get a reaction. But every time it exploded, we'd make up just as hard. Some nights, we'd swear we loved each other more than anything in the world. At the same time, my life outside of us was chaotic, to say the least. We had separate circles of friends. Kyle was the human equivalent of a red flag waving itself in your face. I never liked Kyle. I remember the night it happened so clearly it still makes my stomach twist. At first I thought it was her. We were fighting on and off at the time, nothing new. Just the usual accusations and half a pop. The first was a nude of my girlfriend. My brain froze, my thumb hovering over the screen. I didn't even react at first. I just stared at the screen, my blood thumping in my ears, the exhaustion suddenly gone, replaced with white-hot rage. I remember sitting on the edge of my bed, scrolling through the pictures over and over until my vision blurred. The next day we fought. Eventually, she told me the whole story. So we did what we always did. We fought it out. I buried the betrayal the way I'd buried every other toxic moment between us. The funny thing is, but I couldn't move on. I also started paying more attention to Kyle from a distance. I didn't start fights. I didn't know how or when I'd get payback. I just knew one day somehow. Time does funny things to old wounds. Sometimes it heals them. Sometimes it buries them, so deep, worn down, stressed out, like someone who hadn't gotten a full night of sleep in years. We talked for a bit, mostly small talk. She offered me a beer, and I figured why not. I sat down, watched her bounce between making food for the kid and trying to have a normal conversation. Before I knew it, we were in Kyle's bedroom, on his bed, doing exactly what he had done to me years before. It was messy, rushed, fueled by old anger and something neither of us wanted to name. That's when I noticed her shirt thin almost see-through in the daylight. I made some dumb comment about it without missing a beat. She just pulled it off and tossed it aside, laughing like it was nothing. We made small talk about stupid things, how crappy the neighborhood was, how expensive diapers had gotten, how she hated Kyle's friends hanging around the apartment all the time. It felt normal, easy, and for the first time, I saw her not as Kyle's girlfriend or wife, but just as Hannah, woman who looked tired and worn out and done with the bullshit. It was only the beginning of something much bigger, much darker, and way more satisfying than I ever could have imagined. And then it was fast, desperate, closed half off, moving from the hallway to the bedroom, not even bothering to close the door all the way. The kid was asleep in the other room, but neither of us cared. After a while, the affair just slowed down. The texts came less often, and when I did stop by, she seemed distracted, tired, focused on her kid. One day I realized it had been over a week since I'd heard from her, and I didn't feel any urge to reach out. She'd text me something casual, "Hey, can you bring me another pack of smokes or kids with my mom? Come hang out." I always went. I had no idea how deep the damage would run, or how completely his life would unravel. It was about me reclaiming the power he'd stolen. He'd tried to humiliate me, to cut me down and rub it in my face. But in the end, I took something from him that he couldn't replace. The trust in his own home. The certainty that his world was solid. But I wasn't sitting around hoping for more. I had my own life to deal with. My band was picking up momentum. I was working less and playing more shows, meeting new people, building something real for the first time since high school. I'd gotten my revenge, slept with Kyle's wife in his bed, given him exactly the humiliation he'd handed me years before. He was out all the time, supposedly cheating, supposedly dealing, supposedly getting mixed up in some shady shit. Their marriage was crumbling, And I knew, without a doubt, that sooner or later the truth about me and Hannah would come out. And when it did, it would break him. But more importantly, I felt free. Like the poison he'd dumped into my life had finally bled out. Sometimes we didn't even talk first. Sometimes I'd walk in, she'd pull me straight to the bedroom, and we'd go at it until we were both spent. Almost. It was anger, revenge, spite, all wrapped in this sweaty, messy package that made me feel like I was finally getting the upper hand. Every time I left that apartment, I imagined Kyle coming home later, crawling into that same bed, clueless. That image alone kept me going back. We didn't mention Kyle. We didn't talk about whether we'd do it again. Occasionally, she'd make some bitter comment about him being out all night or disappearing on weekends. Once, she hinted he was cheating again, same as he'd always done, but she never seemed upset about it. More resigned, like she'd already decided he wasn't worth fighting for anymore. She just laid there breathing hard, staring at the ceiling like she was waiting for guilt to show up and smack her in the face, but it never did, or at least, she didn't let it. She'd text me when she wanted me to come over, I'd show up, we'd hook up, and then I'd leave. It felt like revenge, but also like closure. Eventually, we stopped. There wasn't any big blow-up or falling out, we just drifted away, like the chaos had served its purpose. Part of me felt guilty. This was Kyle's wife, the mother of his kid. Kyle would never know. Or maybe he'd find out eventually in some drunken fight, and it would blow up his life the way he'd blown up mine. Either way, I felt like I'd won. Sure, I was angry, and I'd carried the memory of those pictures Kyle sent me for years, letting them rot somewhere deep inside. But when Hannah took her shirt off and laughed like it was the most normal thing in the world, something in me just snapped. I wasn't thinking about revenge. I wasn't thinking about the future. I just wanted to take something from Kyle the way he'd taken something from me. Another part of me felt a spark of dark satisfaction, like the universe had just handed me the chance I didn't know I'd been waiting for. Forget they re there until something rips a scab off and you re-bleeding all over again. That's what the next few years felt like for me. After high school, I tried to leave all the drama behind. I picked up more shifts at the toy store, started focusing on my band, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't constantly fighting with someone. Hannah and I weren't exactly close back in high school, but we'd seen each other at parties, heard all the stories, and now here I was, delivering smokes to her door like some neighborhood errand boy. The girl moved out of state not long after graduation. We still talked, sometimes mostly late-night texts or calls out of the blue when one of us was drunk and lonely, but it wasn't like before. We were finally free of each other's orbit. As for Kyle, I didn't hear much. I got a random message on Facebook from Hannah, Kyle's wife. I hadn't spoken to her much before, but I knew who she was. She was the girl he'd manipulated, abused, cheated on. But for whatever reason, she stuck around. A few mutual friends mentioned he'd gotten married. The conversation was casual. We caught up on life, where we were living, what jobs we had, old friends and gossip. It was weird but strangely comfortable. Hannah told me she was living just a few blocks away, raising their kid mostly on her own, because Kyle was hardly around or always causing trouble somewhere. Had a kid. She messaged me again, asking if I could do her a favor. She was out of cigarettes, stuck at home with the kid, and going crazy. I didn't have anything better to do that day, so I said sure. Was working some dead-end job and still stirring up drama like always. I didn't care. He was a toxic blur in the rearview mirror, and as far as I was concerned, he'd fade out of my life forever. Or so I thought. A couple years after graduation, at first a few weeks later, I remember driving over there thinking how surreal it was. When she opened the door, I noticed immediately how tired she looked. Eventually, the kid went down for a nap, and Hannah and I stepped out onto the patio for a cigarette. I can't even describe the feeling that rushed through me. We went back inside, and one thing led to another. For a few weeks it became a thing. At the time, I thought that was the end of it. I'd gotten my revenge, balanced the scales, and moved on. What I didn't realize was that this wasn't the end of the story. I'll be honest, the first time it happened I didn't plan it. It started on that patio, sun beating down, cigarette smoke curling into the sky. But when we stepped back inside, the energy shifted. I don't even remember who kissed who first. It just happened. When it was over, we didn't talk about what it meant. Over the next few weeks it became our routine. I'd never felt anything like it. It wasn't love. It wasn't even lust in the usual way. She never said much about him, and I didn't push. I wish I could say there was some big dramatic moment where we confronted the reality of what we were doing. But there wasn't. I didn't feel bad about what we'd done. In fact, part of me felt relieved. A few months later I heard through the grapevine that Kyle and Hannah were fighting more than ever. At the time I thought that was the end of it. Looking back, The affair wasn't even about Hannah. It wasn't about wanting her, or even about hurting Kyle in any big way. And that was enough, at least for a while. He'd show up at friends' houses in the middle of the night, rambling about how he was going to find me and make it right. She'd spent years dealing with his crap, but this time, she fought back. She took him for everything in their divorceful custody of the kids, the apartment, child support. He threatened Hannah, accused her of lying, of humiliating him in front of everyone. He'd been holding on by a thread before that, working a crap job, drinking too much, screwing around behind Hannah's back. But after the photos, he completely lost it. Possession. I felt this strange, quiet peace settle over me. Life was moving fast. Our band was on tour. I was meeting new people, staying out late in strange cities, soaking in the chaos I used to only dream about in high school. He blamed me for it, all said I stole his friends, stole his wife, ruined his family, ruined his life. He couldn't accept the fact that he'd dug his own grave. Even when he was broke, even when he was homeless, even when he was high out of his mind, he talked about me like I was the monster that crawled out of his nightmares and ripped his world apart. Some nights, the poison he tried to pour into my world. And honestly, that's the best revenge of all. Deep and chewed up and spit out by every bad choice he'd ever made. Maybe part of her wanted him to hurt. Maybe part of her just wanted to burn every bridge and start over clean. I'd lie in the cramped bunk of the tour van. Anticlimactic it all felt. Part of me thought I'd pop a bottle of champagne when he finally got what was coming. Instead, I just felt this quiet relief, like a weight I didn't know I'd been carrying had finally been lifted. That second kid Kyle was so convinced it wasn't. Hannah knew that. Remembering Kyle's text, he showed up at bars, asked around at parties, even cornered a couple people I knew, demanding my address. Nobody gave it to him. Nobody wanted anything to do with him anymore. He'd burned them all out with his drama, his threats, his violent outbursts when he didn't get his way. Those last, he pulled the gun, demanded cash, but the clerk wasn't having it. The guy lunged over the counter, tackled Kyle, and pinned him until the cops arrived. They found the drugs in his pocket and charged him with armed robbery, possession, and intent to distribute. What's THX and wonder what was? Call it fate, call it revenge served ice cold, whatever you want to call it. I'll tell you this. It felt damn good knowing the monster finally got eaten by his own darkness. Last I heard, he was serving a 12-year sentence, no parole for the first 8. I hadn't heard from him in years. Apparently he'd tried to rob a liquor store with a loaded pistol and a pocket full of meth. He got caught on camera, tackled by the clerk, and arrested before he could even get out the door. I heard from people he was obsessed with finding me. He'd show up at old haunts, asking if anyone knew where I lived, ranting about revenge, saying he was going to settle the score. Out of nowhere, I got a message from Melissa. She was another girl I dated briefly in high school. One of those good girl types everyone assumed would marry young and settle down. She hadn't. Instead, she'd been keeping tabs on everyone from our class, watching their train wreck lives unfold through social media like some guilty pleasure reality show. Melissa didn't even think he remembered I existed. Besides, by the time he was really looking for me, he was a wreck, half drunk, half strung out, barely holding himself upright. Word got around he was dealing meth on the side just to survive. Almost cautious. Hey man, can I ask you something serious? After the set, I was working the merch booth, sweaty, when I ran into an old friend from high school at a dive bar. We got to talking, catching up on everyone we knew, and eventually Kyle's name came up. My friend just shook his head and let out this low whistle. I felt the smirk crawl across my face before I even typed a response. I scrolled through my old phone backups until I found the folder I'd nearly forgotten about. 2 pictures, one of Hannah giving me head in their bedroom, and well, let's just say it erased any doubt he might have had. I sent them both, along with one word. It was from Kyle. I almost laughed when I saw his name pop up on my phone. Part of me wanted to ignore it. His reply came fast. I'm in the hospital, shit's real bad. Did you ever spend time with Hannah? I swear. So I replied. He shot back immediately. I did. He didn't reply with rage. I didn't think about it again until a few months later. Man, that dude went off the rails, he said. Apparently, Kyle had already suspected Hannah's second kid wasn't his. He started drinking harder, using pills and whatever else he could get his hands on. Hannah wasn't the type to take shit quietly anymore. Kyle spiraled fast. He lost his job. His buddies, sick of his drama, stopped answering his calls. The best part, Kyle knew exactly why it was all happening. He blamed me. I wasn't worried. I'd moved twice since then, and none of our mutual friends were dumb enough to give him my address. Eventually, I stopped hearing anything at all. Then, about 2 years ago, another old ex from high school reached out. She'd heard what happened to Kyle. He went down hard, felony armed robbery. When she told me that, call it karma. I didn't hear much about Kyle for a while after that. Then, Centric was surreal reading the details. People said he'd become obsessed with me in the years after Hannah left him. Hannah, on the other hand, was thriving. She got herself together, held down 2 jobs, kept the kids fed, even started seeing someone new. The best part, looking back, I sometimes wonder how different things could have been if we'd all just walked away from each other in high school. Maybe Kyle wouldn't have ended up in prison, Hannah wouldn't have gotten dragged through years of hell, and I wouldn't have spent so much time carrying around anger like a loaded gun in my pocket. But life doesn't work like that. Some people cross your path and poison everything they touch, and the only thing you can do is survive and figure out how to stop them from sinking you along with them. But I also don't let it rule me anymore. Back then, revenge felt like oxygen. I needed it to breathe. I've learned how to let go of the past without letting myself forget the lessons it taught me. And the biggest one, holding on to hate for someone who wronged you. Don't let it rot you from the inside out. Real-life stories like this. Sometimes it's quiet, patient, years in the making. Kyle thought he got the last laugh, but all he really did was light the fuse to his own destruction. I didn't swing the hammer that wrecked his life. He did that himself. I just gave him the push. So if someone ever tries to ruin you, let time, karma, and a little creativity do the talking. And hey, subscribe if you want more savage stories like this one. Smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. Because, trust me, there's always another twisted tale waiting in the shadows. Be patient, stay strong, focus on yourself, on the things that bring you joy, and trust that karma is better at handling monsters than you'll ever be. You don't have to swing the sword to get revenge. Sometimes, the best revenge is letting someone destroy themselves while you build a better life and never look back. Now, I barely think about him, and when I do, it's only to remind myself how far I've come. I'm not going to pretend I'm some noble hero in this story. Part of me hopes she finds peace, because we were both just kids back then, tangled up in a toxic mess that none of us were mature enough to escape. Maybe someday I'll run into her again, maybe not. Either way, I wish her well. I did what I did out of spite. I wanted Kyle to hurt the way he'd made me hurt. I wanted him to feel powerless, humiliated, broken, and he did. But the years have given me perspective, and now I realize the real victory of his auntie in hooking up with Hannah or sending those photos. The real victory was moving on while he stayed stuck in his own hell. Kyle built a life on control, manipulation, and violence. He thought he was untouchable, that he could cheat, lie, and abuse anyone he wanted without paying a price. But the universe doesn't work like that forever. Eventually it catches up to you, and when it does, it doesn't matter how tough you think you are, karma will kick your teeth in while the world watches. I don't feel guilty about what happened. I don't feel sorry for him. Some people deserve exactly what they get. Hannah moved on too. Last I heard, she's doing fine, working hard, raising her kids away from all the bullshit. These days, I put everything into my music, my friends, building something real that can't be taken away by some asshole with a grudge. So if you're sitting there right now, and if you want to hear more savage, revenge doesn't always come in a blaze of glory.